Everybody joining me this week on the show. My guest this week, the featured guest here on the Phillip Jordan Show, is John Vogel, one of the best guys to go to talk all things NFL draft, a draft analyst over NFL Draft Blitz. He was in Mobile all last week, the beautiful weather in Mobile all week to check out, cover, and break down the Senior Bowl. And John, it's always good to talk to you. Always good to see you. I'm glad you come on the show today.
Yeah, always good to come on the Phillip Jordan Show and chat with you, man. I mean, you always do a good job with the show and the direction and all that stuff. And I know I always run way over time, and I'm sorry for that. But yeah, I'm ready to get into some of this stuff.
You guys hear it. So we planned 20 minutes today. If we go over 20, it's not the host's fault. John has admitted that.
Oh no, it's 100% me. I could talk for 3 hours on these topics that you've sent over. So trying to condense it's going to be my problem.
It's a good thing about podcast versus radio. You don't have to be restricted at 15, 20 minutes, and then you can expound. You can go more long form. But Senior Bowl week, obviously, they're in Mobile. And at the end, guys, we will pick the Super Bowl. But as you can see in John's background there, we kind of might be a spoiler alert to what we're going to get at the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. That'll be saved for last, and so you're going to have to wait on that one. Just the little tease there for the end of the conversation. But Senior Bowl week, you were there the entire week through practice and the game. And for people out there that's maybe have only gone to the game, they hadn't got to cover it like in the capacity that you were. What is the week like? What is kind of like the day to day at the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, so you got everybody checks in on Monday. You got your first practice on Tuesday. You go out to the stadium. You've got two different practices, two different teams, one right after the other. There's probably about a half an hour, maybe 40 minutes between the two. And I mean, this year there was a lot of chaos. I think it was because they credentialed 4,000 people, not just media, but league combined. So I think it was probably a healthy split between, I would say, probably 1,000 people from the NFL were there, maybe more, maybe closer to 1,500. And then you had, 2,500 to 3,000 journalists that were all covering the event. So it was pretty hectic on that side of things. But you have the practice, Tuesday, you have a practice on Wednesday, you get a practice on Thursday. And those are the important parts of the Senior Bowl, right? Where that's where what everybody's there to watch. A lot of the NFL teams, they dip out. People go home the Friday before the game. So that's an off game. It's an off day. It's a start of Mardi Gras, by the way. So they have a Mardi Gras parade. There's typically some sort of concert to kick it all off. This year it was Nelly. And that's right there in downtown Mobile, which is, you can't beat that location. Downtown Mobile is one of the most underrated downtowns, I think, in the entire country. If you want to go spend some time and have a really good time and not spend a ton of money doing it, Mobile's great for that. And then lastly, I think, you finish up with the game on Saturday, and it's pretty much done at that point. And so it's a good week. It's a 3 practices plus the game to really evaluate the guys. And I mean, they're walking around Mobile. Everybody's walking around Mobile. The people that you see, it's kind of mind blowing sometimes. Where you'll be hanging out at a bar and Dan Marino walks in, and you don't know who's going to be behind Dan. There's going to be a host of people that walk in with him. So it's just it's a great place to go if you love football and you love the NFL and really any level, college as well. You're going to see a lot of people.
Yeah, I've always said there are people out there that only like college or only like the NFL, but I've always thought about draft season. It kind of brings the two together. I mean, it does bring the two together because it's these guys that were so good in college. You got to learn about these guys, especially if you're a fan of an NFL team. You want to know about these guys. If you didn't watch Saturday football and coming Sunday, and then obviously college football fans obviously are always interested and curious where their guys going to go. And it's also got to be a great chance to network. Like you said, you don't know who you're going to see, who's going to be there. Who was probably one of the more interesting people? It could be a player from the game or just an analyst or personnel person, just anybody. Who are some kind of the more interesting people you got to meet or talk to at the Senior Bowl?
Well, so I think it's there's certain people they like to stay under the limelight. and those are probably the more interesting people, the people that, they'll tell you, hey, if I tell you something, this is your thought, not mine, right? They don't like that recognition and all that. That's fine, it's whatever. But I would say that out of some of the people that we kind of hung out with, even if it was briefly and just in passing and meeting, Tennessee Titans head coach Mike Vrabel was a really funny guy. I mean, he's got a lot of people that usually follow around with him. He knows how to have a good time. Another guy that kind of pops out is he's a coach now, but Arlo Henderson, really good dude out of Tampa. Former player himself, Mississippi Valley State, really had a blast hanging out with him. And on the analyst side of things, I think that Jeff Barnes does a really good job at Draft Central. If you check out his stuff, he's a very interesting guy, really meticulous about his craft, and he'll sit there. He's one of those guys that'll talk ball with you all day, any day, doesn't matter where.
Yeah, so let's jump into the game now, and well, not the game, just the week in
Mhm.
general. Because the game's the game, but then the whole week. And non-quarterback, I'm just going to press this non-quarterback, because we're going to get into those guys a little bit later to kind of separate them. Who are some players, or maybe just one player that really stood out the most to you that really left the week really, like, wow, this guy really impressed me.
And I liked this guy coming into the week. I think he's one of my favorite players, but everyone else saw it this week, and it was Tajay Spears, the running back out of Tulane. I mean, dynamic playmaker, great one cut guy. He can blow up some people in pass protection. I was sitting there with he used to be a full-time scout for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Now he works for NFL Draft Bible, Bo Marchetti. And Bo and I were sitting there, and I saw Tajay line up. I think this is the second day of practice. I saw them lining up in pass protection drills, running backs against linebackers. And I saw Tajay lining up, and I tapped him. I said, hey, look over there. Look at Tajay. And he looked just in time to see Aubrey Miller come off the line and just get mauled by the little, 5'9", 205 Tajay Spears. And so he's a vicious pass protector too. And you see all this stuff on tape. He really he didn't play much in the actual game that people saw on NFL Network, but the entire week of practices, he was absolutely dominant. He did everything really well. I think that he's a guy that's going to go a lot sooner than most people realize right now.
Yeah, I know I was watching the game, and this is throughout the week, and I saw on Twitter you were highlighting him as well. Just and then, like you said, he seems like a back that can pretty much do everything. He's not like a one trick pony. He's not just a running back. I mean, between the tackles, like I said, pass block, and then a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield. I know there's a couple times during the game, Daniel Jeremiah kept saying he wished they would throw it to him more on some like different kind of routes, and other stuff. They kind of didn't do it. But he really is a guy. I mean, and that's value as to an NFL roster. If you have more than one skill set, you're not just this or that. So I mean, this may be putting you on the spot. Where could you kind of see him going? Like not team, but just kind of round.
Yeah, I think no, it's really he was the guy that I came in with a third, fourth round grade on. And so I think that's probably the range that he's going to end up going, because let's be honest, running back is a position where there's a lot of people that enter it every year, and they talk about a bunch of different, guys that pop. I mean, Bijan Robinson in Texas is probably the best running back in the class, and Jahmyr Gibbs out at Bama is really good too. And it's also a position where if you are in the what's the word I'm looking for, the younger like if you are a underclassman and you have any NFL draft interest whatsoever, you declare every year. And we see this because of the shelf life of the running back, the amount of talent that's coming out all the time. If you can go play in the NFL, you go do it, because next year you have a bad year, you get hurt. Now all of a sudden you've got the injury, you've got the tread on the tires, and nobody wants to touch you like they did last year. So it's one of those where everybody kind of jumps the gun and goes straight for the draft. And so Tajay is one of those guys. He might not be in the top 5 running backs that comes off the board. He might not be top 10. He could be a guy because of his size. He's 5'9", and he's 205. There's a lot of guys that are bigger than him. He slips down draft boards just because of size. But I think that he's probably going to go late 3rd, early 4th, probably right there in the 9, 10, 11 range in the position. And, in terms of where he's going to rank there, but he's going to be a top 5 guy in this class. Arguably, I think he ends up with a top 3 career out of this class.
And looking to go at the game, and I know this is from the game, but just the whole, your thoughts on the whole week. The offensive line talent was pretty good on both sides. I know the American probably had a little advantage of that on the offensive line, but a lot of offensive line talent on Saturday. People that watched the game, of course, you yourself saw during the week in practice.
Yeah, I mean, Darnell Wright really did a lot for himself this week. Osiris Torrance is a guard that could go in the first round. Cody Mauch is a guy who might sneak into the first round as a swing tackle guard. I mean, he's there. There's a ton of great talent at that position this year, which is very helpful when, you kind of wish that you had a better quarterback, or 2 better quarterbacks. The quarterbacks were not incredibly overwhelming this week. But you had a great offensive line to protect them. They really helped those guys not take too many hits and be able to kind of get through things so we could evaluate them properly.
So obviously the game was in Alabama, and I'm from Alabama, so there were 3 players I wanted to highlight and get your thoughts on. And this is the defense side of the ball. So if everybody said, "Man, you just been talking about running back, offensive line, you can talk about quarterback," okay, we'll get your defensive players covered with the in-state guys. Obviously, the team I cover, last one calls football, Auburn. Derick Hall, I just felt I got to watch him every game. Tremendous talent. Probably not a lot of people talking about him toward the end of the year because, look, Auburn wasn't good. I mean, that's what happens. You kind of fall out of the conversation. A player that had 6.5 sacks this year. He had 9 last year. But what was your takeaway from him during the week? And, how has he progressed in your mind?
Derick Hall already kind of coming in is a borderline first-round pick. He's a very solid player. I mean, you want to talk about a guy that can get after it as a pass rusher and be a solid run defender. That's Derick Hall. He did everything he could to help his stock. He looked the part. He weighed in very well. So I think that Hall is fine. I think Hall might really sneak into the top. I think top 30, maybe right around 24, 25. After the Super Bowl this week, I'll have my first full mock draft of the year. We'll talk about that kind of stuff when that comes out. Once the draft order is officially set, that's a guy that can sneak up there. He's very talented. Now, just to stay on Auburn really quick, because there's another Auburn player who was there, and that was I might be slaughtering his name. I'm sorry, Ikuliota. Now,
you got it right.
That's a guy he played. Oh, good. That's the guy who he played linebacker at Auburn. And this week, they had him playing some down snaps, playing with, a hand in the dirt, playing defensive end. And let me tell you what, that was something that really helped his stock there, Phillip, because this guy can play defensive end. He's got a great first step, and he's got some hands he can throw around. He's kind of built like that, too. He's not that much different body type and body size than Derick Hall. So I think Leota did a great job helping his draft stock this week, too.
Yeah, I remember going into this past season, everybody was talking about, okay, what do you do with these 2? Because they're both edge rushers. That's what they were listed as at Auburn. And then Iko gets hurt during the year. And then, really outside of Kobe Wooden, I mean, Auburn didn't really have much of a pass rush outside of Derick Hall. So that was a guy, and I did see some stuff that how well he did do this past week, which is good to see because he obviously was highly talented. Everybody thought highly of him going into the season. But it kind of fell for a play like that. You get hurt, and then obviously this is a great opportunity for him, but you get hurt middle of the year. Out of sight, out of mind, which is kind of a negative. A bad side is when you do get hurt like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So Alabama, DJ Dell was a guy I've seen. There was a lot of buzz around him this week. Was obviously a tremendous player for Alabama on the defensive front. Big old guy, 6'3", 300 pounds. But any thoughts on him for the week?
Yeah, good week overall. I mean, he did everything he was supposed to, right? And that's what you could expect from these Alabama guys that come through every year. They got to do what you expect them to do. They got to play. That's really all that you expect from them. And I mean, if you play at the University of Alabama, I'm not saying that everybody helmet scouts, but I'm saying that you get a lot of additional exposure that allows teams to be on top of your grade and have your report really done before any of these all-star events. And so it's really all about at that point with Dale this week. The only thing we really wanted to see was him come out weigh in exactly where we thought he would, which he did, and then look the part. Look what he's supposed to do, which he did too. So I think Dale is going to probably be, a borderline day 2, beginning of day 3 guy. It's an interesting class in terms of his position group, but I think that it was fine. It was a good week overall for him as well.
So we're gonna go to Troy now. And this is a hometown guy that was playing back, close to where he's from. And I'm talking about Carlton Marshall. And obviously, I'm not far. And John, I'm like an hour from Troy. I mean, I was actually there at a basketball game on Saturday night, so it's an hour drive for me from Troy. And Carlton Marshall, I know I see a lot of stuff on him. Undersized linebacker. Obviously, know he's the FBS all-time leader in tackles. Really, the heart and soul of that Troy team. That went, only 2 losses all year, won the Sun Belt, won their bowl game. What were your thoughts on him? And just, what is he? What is he at the next level?
Yeah, so Marshall played the first day of practice and then sat the rest of the week. It was there I believe he was there for the game. I believe he was at all the practices, just wearing a jersey, watching, and he looked all right. Now the thing is, with a guy like that, you hope obviously you can make him a box safety, right? So, like what we would call a rover, or as Saban would call his star defender. It's that's what the role that you want to get him involved into, because the size obviously is very it's lacking. He's a solid tackler, and he can move in space, and I think that's what you're going to kind of hope is he's going to be a third down or a first and second down linebacker. If you can play in your base package, he's going to do that. He's going to have to make a living on special teams.
So let's jump to the quarterbacks. I told her, most of the time I think people do these conversations, and you've done plenty of them. They want to jump to quarterback first. I figured we'll tease the audience, the 2 hot topics toward the end. But I want to first ask you about a quarterback that was not there. And I know you've had some thoughts online on Twitter about Stetson Bennett, and just how big would this weekend or this past week would have been if he'd been to the Senior Bowl? Because as a guy, we look, 25 years old, he's been in college forever, great college quarterback, but we also see, you kind of wonder what can he be at the next level? Was it, in your opinion, was it a mistake on his part to not be there this past week?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that if you ask Stetson right now, and this is assuming that Stetson does want to play professional football, because that's something that I've teased at a little bit, is you look at just everything that's happened over the last couple of weeks and the information that's come out. Now, supposedly he has signed with an agent. I don't know if that agent just has not submitted the paperwork yet to the NFLPA saying that they've got him, but there is supposedly he does have an agent, which would say that, yes, he does want to play professional football. Because that was the first holdup. I was told by another agent in the industry, he texted me, I guess it was the day I got down to Mobile, that he still on the website was not listed with an agent, an NFLPA certified one. I mean, he's got NIL collective agents, like that. But no, he didn't have an NFLPA one yet. And then I think that let's say he does want to play professional football, put that thing off to the side. I think if you ask Stetson right now, he'd say it was a mistake, because if he's going to the Senior Bowl, he's not in Dallas, he's on his way to Mobile, and not getting arrested for public intoxication, and now he's talking to 32 NFL teams. And I think that's the thing that hurts him in this process. A lot of people don't realize how big it is going to the Senior Bowl, and how all the NFL teams are there. And it's a week, it's like a big giant homecoming for the NFL. You got a lot of friends that you don't get to see a lot all the time, scouts being on the road, this and that. Everybody comes to Mobile for this event. And it's sort of that big homecoming where you're hanging out with people after you're done working for the day, or in between breaks or whatever, practice. And you're talking to people that you haven't seen really most of the year. And so having an arrest, 2 days before practice starts, as the entire league is descending upon Mobile. Now that everybody's talking about, they're not talking about how you just won a national championship, you're back to back, not talking about the skill set that might work as a backup spot starter in the NFL. You're talking about, oh, he just got arrested, he's not here, we can't interview him, blah, 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 blah. And that's not a good look on his part. So yeah, I think that if you asked him today, he would say that yeah, it was a mistake not to be there, and he definitely would have shown out. He would have been the best quarterback there, I think.
Because you look on the flip side of that, Hendon Hooker, obviously someone that's still recovering from injury, but he was there. I mean, he was talking to teams. He was doing all things he
Mm-hmm.
could do. I mean, obviously he can't participate because he's still recovering from the injury. But as you said, everybody's there. You can as I mean, what were your thoughts on Hendon Hooker, doing that, going through that? Because I mean, it can't hurt you. It can only do is help you.
No, and that's the whole point of the Senior Bowl is the interviews. It's not so much about the on field and what happens there. Like that's all good stuff, and we want to see that, especially with certain guys that play up to the competition, right? So you got a Division II or an FCS guy. We briefly mentioned Mock out of North Dakota State, I think earlier when we were talking about offensive linemen having a good day. Um, Tyson Badgett, the kid out of Shepherd, showed up as he's a D2 quarterback. These are the kind of guys that we want to see at that level, right? And we want to see them play. We want to make sure that they look the part. They play up to the competition level. And when you have a guy but I mean, outside of that, when you come from Tennessee, we got all the tape on you in the last 2 years. We know what you can do, right? And we know that the competition level in the SEC is the best in the country. And sorry, Big Ten, everybody knows it. As much as the Big Ten wants to, puff their chest and say, no, it's us. No, everybody knows it's the SEC. So when you take that into consideration, the whole point of being down there is, for a guy like Hendon Hooker, anyways, even if he was able to play, is the interviews. Getting here, starting to really impress people, with your football IQ, what we call FBI, football intelligence. And, Hendon did that. There's a lot of buzz, a lot of really positive buzz about him, and he may salvage a lot of his draft stock just for being there that week.
And, looking at rest score, of course, Jake Haener from Fresno State wins the MVP, 139, one touchdown in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And Malik Cunningham on his partner there on the national team, just those two quarterbacks that played on Saturday. Then, of course, on the American, Clayton Hughes from Houston, Max Duggan from TCU. You mentioned Tyson Bagent from Shepherd. So, of these quarterbacks, who did the most? Who you think stock may have risen a little bit coming out of the weekend, the game Saturday?
Yeah, I think Bagent was the real question mark, and that's why I mentioned him earlier. And it's because of the level that he played at. It's tough. I understand he was the most productive Division II quarterback in history. He has basically every career record there. And it was smart of him to stay at Shepherd too. I mean, he got to his center there. They've been playing football together since 6th grade. You got all the family there, staying close to home, all that good stuff. It was really smart of him to stay there and not go to a place. I know he had considered West Virginia in the transfer portal last year. And just imagine what that would have been like, going to West Virginia and having to battle JT Daniels and probably losing to JT Daniels to start out, and then just having a tumultuous season. It wouldn't have done him good. So it's smart of him to stay at Shepherd and play there. I thought that he was the best quarterback of the week, and not so much based on the results, but the mechanics that he plays the game with. He is a very solid base. His feet are awesome. He's got a really good arm. And so with him, you're kind of checking, parts of the evaluation off, going, okay, he's fine here. He's fine here. He can improv a little bit. We saw that in the game too. And it's really going to be for him about getting, working from the shoulders up, and adjusting to the speed of the game and being able to understand what he's looking at. And once he gets there, he's a very hard worker. He's a dude that really puts in everything that he needs to. He's going to be a very solid backup quarterback and probably a spot starter as well in the NFL, I think. Tune had a good week. He looked pretty good at times. And then Haener, everybody really who Haener was. I mean, if you read Bruce Feldman's Senior Bowl report last year, where he sat in on some of the scouting meetings and wrote about the stuff and the way that they were talking about it, they were talking about Haener last year and they loved him. And everybody kind of knew who Haener is. He's an undersized guy that you want as a good backup. But he definitely helped himself with a good week and playing well in the game too. So,
And finally, if we get out of here, the Super Bowl. is this Sunday of the biggest game of the year. So I wanted to get your thoughts on the game and who you think is going to win. But I think we know by what is behind you who you believe will win this game. But I don't know. Maybe John will surprise you. I don't think he will. But John, so before we get out of here, your thoughts on the game on Sunday, Chiefs versus Eagles, and who do you got?
Well, so I think when you look at the trenches, that's where everything starts. And I think I said this at the beginning of the year on Gridiron Eve. The way that you have to look at football nowadays is who's going to win the battle in the trenches. And then from there, you look at the quarterbacks. And if it's still close, then you can look at everyone else. And the thing that I kind of look at when I look at Philly on both sides of the ball is they're dominant in the trenches. On the offensive side, they've got arguably the best offensive line in football. They've played incredibly well this year. They're healthy again. They're playing at full strength going into this game. Jason Kelsey is one of the best centers in probably NFL history. And he's still playing at a very high level, in his 10th year or something like that in the NFL now. And so you compare that to the Chiefs defensive line, and the Chiefs, they have a couple guys, but it hasn't been consistent. It's really been Frank Clark having to take over games and make things happen. And so if you think they can neutralize Frank Clark, or they can at least slow him down, there's a really good chance that Philly wins that side. And then you go look at the other side, and obviously the Chiefs have beefed up their offensive line the last couple of years, done a good job doing that. But nobody has really had to face in the AFC the defensive line that Philadelphia brings right now. And they've got a rotation on the inside where they're rotating 4 defensive tackles that are all studs between Fletcher Cox, Damoon Sue, Linval Joseph, and then of course I think that he's like the forgotten guy, and he's the the most interesting, most athletic of the group, Javon Hargrave. And then you've got on the outside Josh Sweat. You can rush it, Brandon Graham. Graham could even go inside if you want him to. And you got Hassan Reddick coming off the edge as well. So 4 double-digit sack guys, first time that's ever happened in NFL history, are on that defensive front for the Eagles. And I just look at that and go, Patrick Mahomes has a bum ankle right now, coming off the sprain a couple weeks ago. And you're expecting him to come out here and play against this defensive line and be able to make some plays. So then even when you go get to the back looking at the Eagles side again, no one's figured out how to stop that offense at all. No one. And the only way that they've been stopped this year has either been self-inflicted turnovers. You look at the Washington game. That was what cost them the game. They were putting a game-winning drive together, and Dallas Goedert fumbled the ball. That was their 3rd turnover of the day. Worst performance by the offense all year. They scored 23 points. And then you go look at, the other 2 games, it's Jalen Hurts is not on the field. Jalen Hurts is on the sideline. And so that's what kind of tells me, if no one's figured out how to stop this offense, I don't think the Chiefs are going to do it in 2 weeks either. So give me the Eagles 31-21. I think that they're going to win soundly, solidly, and decisively, much more decisive than their last win.
So I guess I'll have the last word on this one. I'm going to give my pick for everybody in the open, but just because I'm going to go with the rule with Patrick Mahomes I have with Tom Brady. I won't pick against him. And look, everything you said, I've been thinking about it all week because I keep thinking, which I know in that Super Bowl, the Chiefs had some injuries on the offensive line, but I do go and think back to when they played the Buccaneers, in the Super Bowl when Patrick Mahomes got pressured the entire game, and we saw it happen, which he still made great passes. They just didn't catch them. But I do think about that with this game, but I'm bad. I usually go with certain quarterbacks. I have no real football reasons for picking the Chiefs. It's just I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes. That's just kind of my thoughts on that. But I'll kind of go in more detail for everybody.
What was Tom Brady's record in the Super Bowl? What was Tom Brady's record in the Super Bowl? What was it? Oh, 7-3. That's right.
Yeah, he was 1-1 versus the Eagles. So I'm old enough.
Yes.
I am 36, so I do remember the Donovan McNabb throw-up game in the Super Bowl.
Oh, I remember that year. To T.O. and that entire Brian Westbrook, that team. Oh yeah, that was my team, man.
Yeah, so I remember that very, very well. We're talking about Tom Brady. That's back when we had game manager Tom Brady. That was not the Tom
Yeah.
Brady that he turned into. And a lot of people forget that, man. A lot of people forget that Tom Brady was basically turn around, hand the ball off to the running back, let your defense do your thing. But in the fourth quarter, if we need you to do some magic and win the game, then you can do it. But that was, anyways. We've done gone 30 minutes. We said we do 20. I believe we could go all some long tangent just talking about Brady.
I told you I always do this on the show. Always.
I said on top, if we go over what I said, it was not the host's fault. So the host will not take blame. It's usually my fault. It's usually my fault. But you admitted it early on, so I'm gonna let you carry that one, John. But anyways, always fun having you on. If the listeners and viewers want to check you out, follow your work, where can they find you?
You can find me on NFLDraftBlitz.com. That's where pretty much everything that I've written is published now. My Twitter at Draft Vogel, and because I started getting into the player management side of things, I had Instagram. So I guess if you want to go follow it to Draft J Vogel. So
everybody go check John out. John, as always, I appreciate the time, and I look forward to talking to you again sometime down the road.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate you.